Hi Bartek, do you need to screen share?
in the middle of.
Yes, please.
activity.
I'll log on shortly.
And they're.
Hi, Elisa.
Find themselves and they're
Hi Sarah, how are you?
in mind are not.
We're just muting the audio until we get going.
No problem.
They are posed. Yeah, I wonder.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Passy. I'm Chair of the Community Development and Housing Committee, and I'm pleased to call this meeting to order at 6:31. And with me here are committee members Ruth Katz, Mike Ham, and Michael Tierney. And on Zoom are Michelle Hirsch, who is another committee member, and also I see Melissa Marbelli who is a council member. And we have one agenda item on our agenda today, and that is an update from the Housing Initiatives Department. And so I've welcomed Bartek to the table to make a presentation to us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So apologies to some of the returning council members because we've seen this presentation before. So just wanted to mention that in advance, but first, the newer council members, I did want to give some background before I give a little bit of an update since I last spoke to the common council on this matter. So for about the past 2 years, I've been working with a national organization called the Center for Public Enterprise, CPE, on this concept of public mixed income development. So CPE has been working in other communities around the country on this model. And I've always had this desire in the back of my mind since I've been with the city of Kingston of what else the city of Kingston could do to help make housing projects possible. Obviously, we're involved in sometimes giving public land away for housing. Sometimes we give pilots for housing to help make that housing possible. But we approve projects, right? We have zoning. What else can we do? So that was sort of the genesis of this idea. When we talk about affordable housing, one of the main financing tools that we have is the low-income housing tax credit. That source of subsidy for affordable housing is generally oversubscribed, and that's especially true in New York because it's a limited source of subsidy, and it's also highly competitive. So a project might get the LIHTC award and make the project happen, but they might have to go through several rounds before they're successful, thereby delaying the project. Also, it's not the best tool, right? Frequently, I talk to affordable housing developers who use LIHTC because it's the only subsidy source. But if they had another way to finance their projects, they would happily take advantage of that. And so herein comes this model, this mixed income public development. And there's been a lot of research and buzz around it in the past couple of years. It started in Montgomery County, Maryland, and that's frequently cited as a model and inspiration. And this is now somewhat of an old map, but these are some of the communities that have either started this model or are working towards it. Kingston being included. Some of the ingredients to make a mixed income public development possible, it does include some tax relief, it includes low cost debt, but the third most challenging or important ingredient is a revolving loan fund. And so the basic concept is that this entity, the public sector, has a revolving loan fund of varying size. From this revolving loan fund, the project makes a loan to a developer during the construction phase. And by making that loan in the construction phase, the project doesn't need to go to private equity to get those funds. It can instead benefit from the public sector giving out a contribution from its revolving loan funding. And in return for that contribution, the public sector gains majority ownership over the project. So in this case, it would be City of Kingston, where it's nonprofit, gaining majority ownership over the project over the long term. So it thereby no longer becomes a private sector project. This is, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but this describes the cycle, the fund life cycle of a revolving loan fund. Essentially, the project benefits from a revolving loan fund. Once that project is complete, meaning the construction is complete and it's leased out, The contribution from the revolving loan fund goes back to the revolving loan fund. And at that point, another project can be funded and can benefit from the revolving loan fund. Some of the ambitions for this model, which I've described previously, would be to undertake 1 to 2 projects for every loan cycle. And a loan cycle is about 3 to 5 years. Each project is mixed income without federal or state housing subsidy. And by mixed income, we're including deeply affordable, and market rate units. Because of the public ownership, the affordability is permanent. So it's a project that's designed to last for a long time. What's great about this model is that depending on the size of the revolving loan fund, the size of the project, the housing project, can vary, right? So we could support a 100-unit project, or it could also be much smaller than that, depending on the project that we have in front of us. And then, of course, to the extent possible, we're taking advantage of existing publicly owned land that might be underutilized. We could also approach stalled market rate projects that need financing help to get started. We could also approach affordable housing developers, right, which are seeking that low-income housing tax credit, but haven't been able to get it after going for it for multiple rounds. But in either scenario, right, whatever happens, a project would need to conform to the idea of public ownership, and that project would also need to conform to the affordability metrics, right? So that includes mixed income, including some deeply affordable units. Before going about this in a formal way, I did put out a request for information in late 2004 to see if there were in fact any developers in the area who would be interested in working with the city on this model, right? If this model actually took off. And we did receive 6 positive responses, right? So that was one of the impetuses for me to continue on this model. I think another great thing about this is that it's all about local control. So not only do we have the public ownership over the project, but we're not at the mercy of external subsidies of the federal government funding or not funding affordable housing. We're much more in the driver's seat. So that was another thing for me that makes this attractive. Since bringing this model up, the state level, there's been this Social Housing Development Authority Act introduced. And so there's some similarities with the ambition of this model with this bill that has been introduced. So I'm going to pause. Any general questions, thoughts, comments before I jump into the present? Yes.
So I understand it's been tried already, not just in Maryland, but a few other places.
Correct.
Do you have like a sort of a case study, like a story to tell about any of those places? You can kind of bring it.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to Montgomery County, which in some ways is very different from Kingston because it is much larger, of course. But in their case, there was a market rate project that had stalled because that project could not raise the financing needed for construction, in part due to increases in construction costs, interest rates, and other factors. And so they approached that developer to see if they would be interested, right, in going under this model. The developer agreed. That project is now built, right, providing hundreds of housing units. And it's been such a success that the county has actually doubled down on the model. They've actually increased the size of the revolving loan fund, right, and are now in the process of making a second round of investments from the fund. So I think the fact that they've gone through several iterations of this, right, have doubled down on the model, I believe is a positive sign.
Does that development have a name?
It's called the Laureate.
The Laureate?
Yes, I can send you some New York Times articles on it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And so it went from being a market rate development to being
A mixed
a
income.
mixed income development.
Yes.
And that's part of what would be required for
Mhm.
any of these situations.
Yeah, and actually, that project was majority public ownership. But the public entity has actually bought out the developer, so now it's 100% publicly owned project at this point.
And where is it in Montgomery County?
You stumped at that, so I
It
don't
can be
remember.
found.
I
Google
don't
knows it.
remember. Yeah, I don't remember the exact jurisdiction.
So I have a laundry list,
Mhm.
okay?
Yep, I'm listening. I'm getting my pen.
These are my midnight snack thoughts that I have.
It's a lot of snacking. Good point.
But I gotta tell you, I really like answers to these,
Mhm.
okay? I really would. I mean, I don't I drive right through every one of them, but you know what I mean? That's why I figure I compare them on this.
Mhm.
But, you know, a lot of questions on this. I think the biggest one is why now? Why now? Why make it now? I mean, you've got UCEDA, UCIDA, UCCRC, Kingston Housing Authority, KLDC. You also have the Housing Action for Ulster County.
Mhm.
Okay, so why is it so important that you create a brand new nonprofit at this point?
Yeah, well, a lot of those entities that you described wouldn't fill the particular niche that this nonprofit would.
Like what?
Well, the Housing Action Fund is great in contributing to projects, but their max award, I believe, last round was $700,000, right? So that alone would not make a project go from unfeasible to being feasible just by virtue of that one word.
So it's
That
capped,
doesn't substitute for,
it's capped.
exactly, right? I mean, it wouldn't substitute, this is intended to be a substitute for a LIHTC, right? Talking about significant capital to make a project.
Okay, so what's the cost of you getting this off the ground? You know, there's administrative fees,
Mhm.
there's admin, okay?
Mhm.
So you've got hired people. I mean, this can't be a one-man band.
Mhm. At this point, it is a one-man band, but I'm proposing, and I'll update this. I put a board together, initial,
Okay, you're gonna, right, you'll drive me right to that point.
with other municipalities that have done this model, they're intended to be independent, right, of their host organization within Fuji.
Yeah, so, you know, what they need. So that'll jump you right over to my last page on governance, okay? Who appoints the board? Can board members be removed by elected officials or meetings subject to the New York Open Meetings Law?
Mhm.
And will they all be recorded?
Yes,
Okay, so now you have to file with the ABO,
yeah, so this wouldn't have.
Sorry, what's
for the budget office,
baby?
any nonprofit.
Mhm. This would be subject to the audit requirements and like all that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, listen, do not think I'm trying to say this is a bad idea, but I'm asking why now? Okay, especially when so many different entities
Mhm.
exist that you can use as a tool in your tool bag.
Yeah,
And that's something for me, you know? Just bear with me, you know what, I'm getting up and I'm the worst typer in the world, so I scribble things down and then I try to type it and clean it and put it all together, so I'm a little crazy with that. But, you know, I put in here also, you know, if Kingston was to move on, and create this entity, the public first should ask for, and you just stated, an independent audit, okay? No city debt guarantees, okay? And this will all fall back on the other pages where I've got exit strategies, I have, a laundry list going on there. Clear conflict of interest policies, full open meeting, compliance, public reporting of all subsidies, okay? Define success measures, okay? And then a sunset or a review, clause, so, when does it come to fruition and is it automatically review? The review kicks in to see if everybody else wants to still continue on with this. And then it'll take me over into financial exposure. Is the city gonna guarantee any of these loans? Okay, the other thing is bond financing is expensive.
So,
I mean, I'm not trying to overload you, but I'm trying to say, let me put it on paper for you and you can digest all that,
Yeah.
But then hey, I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people and I've been dealing with some of this for a little bit of time. So, so my questions are, for me, it's like these are common questions for me, okay?
yeah, I mean, to be clear, I appreciate questions, but they don't scare me, I guess.
No, they're not supposed to, that's why you ask,
One way I could do this is I could get back to you and the council. And
That would be fine, if you would email us all that, yeah, that would be great,
Yeah, one clarification that I would say is that
yeah.
we're not anticipating bonding for the revolving funds.
Okay, I read an article, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I read an article where it stated that you were heading towards bond financing. One thing I know about bond financing, that can be expensive in a competitive market. How are you gonna have competitive rates
Mhm.
as per somebody going to the bank?
Yeah, so we're not considering bonding.
Okay, so that's off the
I
table.
think that might have been mentioned in the article because Montgomery County, that's how they had initially raised their revolving loan fund is via bonding. But that's not being considered in this case.
So, in that same article, they mentioned approximately 20 million to be funded by the RVL, okay? Or RLF. And so,
Yeah, so these numbers that you have here
yeah,
are statewide, appear to be statewide numbers.
yeah,
So they're not the amounts that we are considering here are much smaller. And we have modeled, right, what a revolving, we had such and such amount of capital. What kind of projects could the revolving loan funds therefore support? Right, and so it's much smaller and can be scaled. So for instance, let's say we have $2.5 million in a revolving loan fund. We would know, we can help a 20 unit, I'm just making numbers up, a 20 unit project get off the ground, right? But these numbers are not compared to what we're considering.
well, the numbers can go always.
Yeah.
So
I got
Michael had raised his hand for a question. Do you mind?
No,
So some of my questions are covered in here, but I do think they deserve, a public hearing of them. But so where is this funding coming from? Because previously it was going to be a bond that the city was on the hook for.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I never said that we would bond. Because, if any public financing were to be used for the revolving loan fund, I would consider that to be last resort, very much last resort. And there are also some legal questions around whether we could even bond for a measure like this for housing, right? Because typically a municipality would bond for infrastructure, right? So there's questions about whether that would be.
So where is the funding going to come from?
I think that's why I'm putting a board together, right? Because so in other places I mentioned Chattanooga, they took a large allotment of their ARPA funding and put it in a revolving loan fund. That's obviously not possible here because our ARPA funding has already been obligated. But they're using that to then attract philanthropic dollars from the revolving loan fund because it's I'm using a term that's very used to me because it could be seen as a legacy gift, right? Because you make a one-time contribution and then that revolving loan fund funds projects for perpetuity. So, but again, I don't have the answers for where the funds would be coming from
So-
because I don't know.
Whoever that is,
Whoever- yes. So whoever's asking a question first, then Michael. Back to Michael. Hello?
Hi, it's Marissa. I just
Hi, Lisa.
I was wondering if there's more slides, are you going to be walking through these other examples? If not, can we just go to the big screen, take it off this screen share? It's hard to see who's talking. Thanks.
Right. Are we finished
Great,
with
thank
the
you.
I have a few more
presentation?
slides, but we can go through that.
Okay, so.
So
okay,
this goes to my point about the board. It was kind of frustrating to see on Friday that a board has already been appointed. There was no press release
Mhm.
seeking applicants. How were they chosen? And I thought it was sort of a mutual understanding that if this project was going to go forward, the council would approve or get appointments. And it just seems like over and over again, we keep having this presentation where we get feedback and it is not incorporated when you come back and give us another presentation.
Well, I mean, the last, right, the last feedback that I had gotten was, we have some questions, right? And I haven't, for many of those questions, those were my next slides, right? I don't have answers to those questions yet because there's no board, right? We haven't made any governance decisions in terms of the term sheet or how we would fund projects or the terms by which we would be funding projects. Right? I don't have answers to those questions.
But you had a meeting today of the board.
Yes, because
People were appointed to this without the council's consent.
there is a board that has not been appointed yet, but it has met, right?
Who has oversight on this board?
Because I cannot answer the questions that the council has been asking me about myself. The oversight of the board. I can get into the governance structure, but it's a subsidiary of the city of Kingston.
I don't understand how it got structured without board approval.
So there's, without common council approval.
Yeah, I mean, I know I wasn't here when you guys first introduced this, but I do know, I know the governance end of it.
Yeah, so the proposed governance of the board is that there would be a total board of 7 members. 2 of those members would be ex officio. So one of those would be the executive branch and the other one would be from the legislative branch. And then the other 5 members would be stakeholders or members. So there would be both legislative and executive involvement and then also stakeholder involvement.
So at least I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, have you finished for the moment?
For the moment.
Right. Okay, so Michael and then Ruth.
So at least now we know who appoints the board. So it's you guys.
Again, I put together some initial board members, 3, who I believe would be helpful in moving this forward. Because obviously, as you mentioned before, I can't not do this. I don't have the expertise to necessarily do this on my own and also cannot.
I didn't say I don't have the expertise. I said, one person is gonna be very tough to do.
I shouldn't be the only one making decisions, right?
But I'm sorry, who are these 3 people chosen? Sorry.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
So first,
Yeah,
Ruth. then-
well, along your lines.
It's like, when you're just.
I'm hearing you say that you have met with a board, but the board hasn't like really officially been appointed. Perhaps for the moment, you can refer to them as advisors that you recommend, that you want to recommend to be on the board that the council approves, as well as the structure. So it sounds like you're kind of in the middle, like you have a vision for it and the people who should be involved. But maybe if you change that to what you're proposing, and that refrain from calling them a board until they're official, and that the council helps make them official. So for now, they're informal advisors.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's not anticipated that the council would approve the board members. So there would be the board, it would actually be in the draft bylaws that the board itself nominates members to the board.
So it's self-governed.
It's chicken and egg.
So
That's friends and family, appointing friends and family.
Okay. That's a horse of a different color.
So Michael, did you want to?
Yeah, so in the operation of this board, I would assume you would be getting it off the ground. Are you doing that as a member of city staff during city staff time?
That's
Or do you do it outside the hours? of
No,
the five?
it's a city project.
If it's a city if it's a city project, shouldn't it be approved by the council? I'm not clear.
Well, if there was a budget allotment that I was looking for, right, which is not the case, then it would have to be approved by the common council. But otherwise, this is a project of the this is a housing project of the executive branch.
Michael?
So in other boards like this, they usually do appoint staff, but they have to track their hours separately from whatever government employment they have, because you are saying, on one hand, it's not city dollars. So we have no role in it, which I think is nonsense. But it's a city project, so we have to use, like, that is where we have oversight. We approve the budget for your department. So there is an input that we have in this process. So I'm not gonna, I don't even know what's to approve, because it seems like no matter the opposition, then it seems like a majority of the council are concerned, not necessarily opposition. It seems like this project is moving forward anyway. So why even have a council? But I do believe that we should be approving appointments to this board. If you're gonna make substantial financial decisions that the city is gonna be on the hook for if somebody defaults.
Absolutely.
And
Let's put it this way, even if you don't structure it that way, okay? If this project, any project, and nobody wants a project to fail, ever, okay? But I'm saying, if a project does fail, the city is almost obligated to come riding in on the white horse and rescue that project. So therefore, the burden is going to be placed back on the taxpayers of the city of Kingston. And now, is this pretty much laid out as a private nonprofit? More flexibility, less oversight, less reporting?
I don't know exactly what you mean by a private nonprofit, but it's a nonprofit.
It's more or less what you're describing to me.
It's a nonprofit under the city of Kingston. The comparables would be the KLDC, the Local Development Corporation, and the Land Bank, in which there's a connection, right, to the boards
Yeah.
of each organization, to the city of Kingston, so here. And there are also reporting requirements that each entity has back to the city of Kingston. So that would also be the case here.
so from the perspective of a member of the public who is interested in truly affordable housing, they have no opportunity to even apply to be on this board. They had no opportunity to really even know about it because it was never in a press release. And it was also held in the middle of the workday. So how could it, like, there's already so much suspicion of government institutions, and especially government institutions and quasi-government institutions that lend funds or, give tax abatements. I just think if we don't approve the members, the meetings happen in the middle of the workday, so nobody can go. I think that this is just a recipe for nobody watching this thing.
I mean, again, that's not my intention to do this under the cloak of the night.
I don't think you
Yeah.
are, and I don't think you are, but I think that there's a perception that could be easily avoided, and we seem to be walking down the same path of it's friends and it's who you know, and it's you get the loan based off who you know. I just don't see how it's going to go any other way, because there is no public oversight of the board, because we do not get to approve appointments. We don't even approve the creation of it.
Yeah, again, I don't think I disagree with that framing of it. At this point, right, there are a lot of questions for how this nonprofit works. Okay, and so, and as I mentioned, right, I can't be the only one in the driver's seat. I had to do this. And so this initial board could get through some of the initial kind of founding steps of this and then say, okay, I think we're at a point where this right, baby's fully born, right? There are vacant board seats. Maybe the way we want to fill the seats is via the public process. Maybe at that point, we should change our bylaws, right? So that the appointments actually happen by the common council. Or half are the executive branch and half are the common council, right? I don't know. There are different governance, obviously, strategies going forward. But right at this point, we're in such an early stage, right? That was my intention of bringing some other minds into. That's
Who? Oh, I'm
So,
sorry,
okay,
I bad apple.
So Ruth and then Mike.
So since it is early stage, and I mean, broadly speaking, it looks like a really big project. But given what these guys are saying, I think it's super legitimate, the concerns. Why not take a step back and say, okay, these bylaws that we have so far are suggested. The board makeup is suggested. We're gonna bring that to the council or a committee of some kind that includes, council members to review it and make suggestions.
Yeah, I mean,
How the process plays out.
I think that's great feedback and I think I'll definitely consider it.
So would there be a loan committee?
Within the board, probably. But again, I'm not sure, right? There's going to be different committees that hasn't sorted out.
I listen, I'm not trying to bomb you with stuff, it's just that, and I am bombing you with stuff, right? So I said, let me write it down,
Mhm.
okay? Let me get some of my thoughts, and don't get me wrong, there's like 4 more pages coming. Okay, I mean, I just, every angle, you just write something different, you have something new that comes up. So, and once again, is it a horrible idea? No, but you want to know something, it asks more questions than it answers. So that's where, this might come into play, maybe we get some answers to some of this. But I gotta tell you, I don't like the fact that I agree with Mike, okay, why introduce it to the board if the board has no input, no oversight, no involvement?
You mean the council?
The council, I'm sorry, Yeah.
Well, it's not, I'd like the council to have input. And what's been proposed is that the council has a seat on the board as well, for input. So it's not like the council is not part of the process. And, the success of this model will also depend in part on the council. Because if public land is being considered, if there's a need for any kind of pilot with the city of Kingston, right, the common council would of course be involved. So there is a role for the council to play through this.
It's a lot of work. There's fee structures, there's attorneys. I mean, it's just,
Fully aware, right, fully aware.
public hearings, blah, 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 blah. That's what I mean, one person just can't do it.
And I wouldn't go down this road if I didn't think it was worth it. I mean, we might disagree on that, of course, it's fine.
I think we
But I
do.
do think it's,
Yeah, we do disagree. So I mean, well, let's be frank, right? I mean, I don't see, once again, I cannot fall back on saying that you have 6 different entities right here in this county alone that do the same exact thing that you're almost proposing, but are already structured and at no cost to the city.
yeah,
Hear me out. I mean, I'm not, you know what? I'm not, bulldoze rubber here, I could figure this out. But I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there, and I think more than ever now, Gotta watch your dollars and cents. But once again, you know what? Let's you finish your presentation. And I don't want to ask any more questions.
Michael had one.
So- Those were all my questions on the governance of it. I have questions on the product of it. So you said deeply affordable. What will deeply affordable be?
Yes, it's 50% AMI.
So I don't think, to Mike's point, I don't think we're actually fitting the need with this. I think, I'm sure the answer is gonna be we need all types of housing, fine. But I think that if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna invest all this money in it and all this time, it should be for homes that the need in the city of Kingston is there for, which is 20 to 50% AMI. And I just feel like this is another revenue source for developers to make money off public dollars from. If we're not actually building homes for the people who need it here in the city of Kingston. And then as sort of the follow-up question is, what are the tenant protections going to be?
Yeah. So I think on the AMI level, the non-negotiables in the other communities that work this model is including housing at 50% AMI. That has shown to be financially feasible, right, within the model, without, again, relying on external sources. But I mean, I think I agree with you. If the numbers work in the underwriting, perhaps we can go deeper, right? But the core non-negotiable for me for this project is that 50% number, right, as a baseline.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
I was wrong. I do have another question.
keep going.
You were just brought up underwriting. Who underwrites these?
Yeah, so it would be right on outside experts, underwriters.
Okay, so there's what, 25%?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
again, we're not considering public
Okay,
funds for this.
so we just brought up a word that is really the big elephant in the room, the word risk. So the highest risk period is starting construction, during construction, and at the end of construction. How do you mitigate those risks? And who
What
monitors,
kind of risk?
better yet, who monitors this process the whole time? Do you go to you source it out to a third party?
By monitoring which aspect? of it?
Well, you've got, I would imagine on something this, you would have a local labor hiring policy to make it advantageous to the city of Kingston or the surrounding areas, just like everybody else would do,
Mhm.
right? Because that's like common practice, right? So you know what? Then you need somebody to monitor. You need to monitor and make sure guys are not coming from Ohio, Oklahoma, Virginia. And before anybody asks, does that happen? Yes, it does. On a lot of projects, and I know you're aware, so, but I'm just, like every time we turn a corner, I just got questioned, so, and, it just, one thing I can take off my thing is the bond, so that's good, you know what I mean? So,
So Michael has a question.
yeah,
Okay.
jump right in, Mike.
So he can jump in. We can come back to you.
Thank you, Mike, for saying the word risk, but the projects will be 50%, at least 50% publicly owned. Does that mean owned by the city of Kingston, or does that mean owned by this non-for-profit, that again, which we have no public oversight of?
Yeah, so it is the nonprofit is the public ownership.
So as the owner of those properties, is the non-for-profit going to be insured against or whatever insurance that a mixed-use residential property of 100 units has to have?
Yeah,
Or is that going to be covered under the city's insurance?
it's not covered under the city's insurance.
Okay.
So. Risk. What about cost overruns? That's what I'm getting at. I'm mitigating cost overruns, delaying the project, delaying material delivery, material spikes, tariffs, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, these are all risks for sure. I think the one thing I would say is that and I didn't go deep into this, but the revolving loan fund is only one contributor to the overall capital stack. Typically, between 20 to 25% of the overall capital stack.
Yeah.
Right? So there's other funding sources that are contributing to making the project happen. It's not just the
But-
revolving.
Have you taken into consideration a monitor or somebody that does
I
that?
haven't gone.
You know, because you've got, you know, let's call it what it is. You have unscrupulous people that come in here with no, you know, insurances, no workman's comp, okay? You got workers' liabilities to lay on you. You've got, you know, there's,
But at this point, this is just a concept, right? So I'm not at that.
you know what? This is a good talk though, because this gets what we're thinking out there in front, you know what I mean? In order for you to digest and maybe say, hey, so this is where we're thinking here, you know?
I was gonna say, in the presentation that you showed us last year, you talked about the different funding options. Is that later on in your slide presentation or?
I'm not getting into.
Oh, okay. Ruth,
To the extent that you have, stories to tell about already existing models, how long they've, you know, how young or old they are. You know, giving us detail on that, not that we would do it exactly the same way, but I think that helps us, for me, that helps me get a grasp on it and have more confidence in the model, knowing that still we might need more oversight in some areas than Montgomery, Maryland needed, or Chattanooga or other places. So, but I always really appreciate seeing already existing models as a starting point. And
So once again, I'll fall back on, it's not a horrible idea. It's just the way you have to execute it, and then you have to protect the taxpayers in the city of Kingston, because one project goes off the rails and everybody's on the hook for that. You know, this could be a great thing. You know, provided that you know, I truly believe that, you know, you've got to follow the, you know, the reporting, the transparency, you know, I mean, the list goes on, right? But if you don't do that, you know, the open meetings compliance, reporting the subsidies, success measures, you know, I mean, that's just it, you know, because without all that stuff, it's going to be risk heavy.
Yeah.
But with it, it's probably a winner, you know?
Yeah, and all these things are, you know, are all being contemplated as being part of this.
Okay.
So,
I'm looking up to our fellow council members to see if either of you have any questions, since we've been taking up a
Yeah.
lot of the time here, but do you have a question, Michelle, that you might like to ask?
It's not so much a question as more of a statement in that, you know, thanks for being here, Bartek. Just let me start by saying that. You know, you mentioned that we have local control, we're in the driver's seat, but this model that you're presenting to us compared to all the other models that you spoke to us about last year seems to be the most conservative version, aside for Chattanooga. I believe Chattanooga is the only other model that does not include tenant protections. So I just want to go on record again and say that I really hope that we can have that built in. And then I guess this is a question, why can't that be the thing that is decided once a board is in place? We're just making all of these decisions are being made before a board even gets seated, and they're just being told then what to do.
I believe that the tenant protection question, right, is definitely a programmatic element of the organization. But typically that's something that is worked out programmatically, right? Once an organization actually is underway and there are projects, right? There's a term sheet issued because there's actually funds in the revolving loan fund. So yeah, I mean, in no way, I mean, obviously tenant protections are an important part of this because there's there's the public ownership that's being contemplated here. There's an opportunity to layer in strong tenant protections, right? That's different from other market rate projects, but it's just too early to promise anything. But there's no decisions on that being made or in any way. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'll just say, you know, again, we have local control. We have the ability to make this amazing. So if we're going to move forward with it, we should make sure that we're doing everything possible to do that.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. Thank you.
Michael?
So can you explain to me how programmatic tenant protections would work? Because it sounds like it could be a violation of the Fair Housing Act if we're saying one development gets a certain kind of tenant protections and another one doesn't, even though it's the same organization.
No, I think what we'd be saying is that, right, if the nonprofit is putting out a term sheet or there is an agreement being made, the nonprofit might say, for the non-affordable units, right, for the market rate units, rent increases are limited to 2% annually, right, no matter what. Or, you know, what's another tenant protection that you would want to see in a project like this, right?
Upkeep of the building.
Right, so these would be things that could be incorporated kind of as we proceed. And we've seen that in other jurisdictions, right, that these are incorporated over time.
And these affordable units are for the lifetime of the agreement.
That's right, or like permanent.
So once again, I'll fall back on the monetization.
Yeah, so in this case, it would be the nonprofit, this public owner.
So now we're adding more costs.
I'm sorry, now we're in what?
You're adding costs.
In terms of compliance costs.
Yes, correct.
Of course, but it's obviously an important part of why we're doing it.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, I agree.
Marissa?
Thank you, Bartek. I guess I'm struggling, and I listened to a version of this presentation earlier or last year, and I was hoping that this presentation would walk us through how you arrived at this model, this approach, and you mentioned there's maybe 7 or 8 other examples. I would love to see a comparative analysis of the different models to better understand why you think that this is the best approach. And my other question, I mean, you said that the nonprofit would be the official owner of the building and they would cover insurance. And I guess that means they would also be responsible for all building maintenance and upkeep as well.
No, so they wouldn't be involved in the day-to-day maintenance of a building or day-to-day oversight. They would just be the controlling entity. Right, so
Okay.
if the nonprofit,
Who does the maintenance?
yeah, so let's say that the nonprofit works with a affordable housing developer, right, to actually build the project. So it would then be that developer who would be doing the day-to-day management maintenance. The nonprofit would not be involved in that. On the comparative models, Marissa, are you just asking for some of the jurisdictions that have pursued this to see the different approaches? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I can ask Center for Public Enterprise for some materials on that. Be happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
I'll ask there are questions that I've asked you in the past that related to questions that we've talked about, which is why not go through the Kingston Housing Authority or the KLDC to have them be the entities that would be overseeing this?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I think at the beginning of this process, we did a landscape of all the other entities to see, right, could one of these groups, existing groups, potentially do this, play this role, and we determined that was not the case. All right, that each one has its own particular mission that falls outside of what is being contemplated here. So happy to go into more detail on it. That being said,
Like-
this nonprofit could work with each of those institutions. So for instance, the example is the Land Bank, right? They have ambitions to build I'm using land, but it could be anyone, right? To build more housing, right, on some of the land that they had put together in Kingston, but they need financing for that. Right, so this nonprofit could potentially step in the playing that role and helping them to get off the ground.
But they're a smaller puzzle. You know, there's single family dwellings, right?
Exactly, and that's in part why, right, they're not a good fit for hosting a model like this.
You know, and I know you took bonds off the table, but I mean, the KLDC has access to the bond market. You know, I mean, bonds, one thing about bonds, and it took a long time for an attorney to sway me on that. Okay? He did, you know, and he explained it very, very well to me, great. But one thing about it is, you know, when you go the bonding round, I mean, you know, the city's not on the hook for that on the bond. But, you know, that'll lead all into the default page, you know, how we protect the city from the defaults, you know, who is on the hook, you know? But once again, like you said, it's premature here, you know, but, you know, questions are being asked. I mean, when you ask one question, you ask 40, you know what I mean? So.
So you had mentioned about coming in to assist struggling projects along. Now, what if that project had already received a pilot agreement for a certain number of affordable units? Are we stuck supporting that project, or can we renegotiate for
I mean, they would have to.
a higher number?
Yes, that scenario, they would have to renegotiate for the higher level of affordability, like contemplated here.
Okay.
It wouldn't. There'd be no interest on this.
So since there seems to be questions, I'll ask another one. So you had explained that this would be set up like the KLDC and like the Housing Authority as a subsidiary sort of the city. So would this nonprofit operate in their governance structure like those organizations, or how similar or different would it structure?
Yeah, so-
those other two subsidiaries?
Yeah, so they would be similar in that there's reporting requirements back to the city,
Mhm.
and that there's also a connection to the boards of each organization back to the city. In the Land Picks case, it is the mayor who's the ex officio and who's also making appointments to the board. I believe that is also the same of the KLDC, which is the mayor making appointments. In this case, it's right as discussed. One, 5 public members on the board, 1 from the common council, 1 from the executive. That's currently done.
Right, and in this, in all transparency, that position was the chair of the Community Development and Housing Committee, whoever that person might be at any one time. Any other questions?
No, I have no issue with having a member of the council serve on that board. I think that's great. I do think that I don't care what the KLTC, how they appoint their members. That happened before I got on the council. But if I was on the council at that time, I'd be saying the same thing. We should be approving the appointments to the board. The mayor makes the appointments, we confirm them.
Sounds like something that could be reviewed in a charter review process.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going into a larger can of worms, but there is no reason why we think the board could not do that right now. It does not require a change in the charter.
That's policy.
What?
Policy,
Yeah.
that's it,
Okay,
policy change.
so are there any more questions?
No.
Did you want to finish the few slides that you
Obviously,
have?
we went over, I can just show
We've
you.
already talked about
We
them.
honestly, we talked over some of these things. I was just going to briefly go over some of the feedback I heard last summer, which included tenant protections, sources for the revolving loan fund, which again, no public funds are being requested, whether we believe there's a need for this or sufficient demand. And then I was going to, the update is there is a current board structure that is being contemplated to get through the next stage. That includes a member from the executive branch and also legislators.
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
Questions? I will get back to you on some of these and also on some of the other requests, but I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and if you
Thank
have
you.
any other questions, we can just email you. Yep, okay. Okay, well, if
Thanks,
there are no
Bartek.
other questions and no other,
No, I was gonna make a motion.
I was going to ask for a motion to adjourn. You jumped the gun. Okay,
Motion.
would you like to make a motion? All right. Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Bye.
This meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.